자, 울먹거리 위치, 연유 위치 먹고.
One person refused to sit on the back of the bus. She changed the ride for all of us. Oh, that's the power of one. Her diary found a light in the dark. A young girl's hope touched millions of hearts. Oh, that's the power of one. One grain of sand can turn the tide. One single spark can light the night. One simple dream, one gentle word, one act of love from someone can start a chain reaction. It all begins in the heart, in the power of one. While the others threw stones, he didn't judge. He moved the world with the strength of his love. Oh, that's the power of one. One grain of sand can turn the tide. One single spark can light the night. One simple dream, one gentle word, one act of love from someone can start a chain reaction. It all begins in the heart, in the power of one. All the little things we do every day, the smallest step can bring on a change. Oh, that's the power of one. 'Cause one grain of sand can turn the tide. One single spark can light the night. One simple dream, one gentle word, one act of love from someone can start a chain reaction. It all begins in the heart, and the power of one. The power of one. The power of
Good morning and welcome to another edition of our Inclusion St. Louis Speaker Series sponsored by the Centene Charitable Foundation. My name is Are Obenson, President and CEO of the International Institute, and we are hosting this series of this speaker series as part of our Festival of Nations activities for the year 2021. The International Institute is an organization that has for 100 years created pathways for refugees and immigrants who make it into St. Louis to become an integral part of this society. Our mission is to build a more connected and productive society to benefit immigrants, their families, and the wider society. And we do this with a vision for a diverse, inclusive, and thriving community. The more information can be found by visiting our website, IISTL.org. And this year, we decided, instead of just having 1-2 days weekend for the Festival of Nations, that we could have a Festival of Nations season in which we would have a conversation really about how we can build a more inclusive St. Louis. We are challenging ourselves and asking ourselves this question repeatedly: is an inclusive St. Louis possible? And for the last 4 Mondays, we've had the speaker series going on. And today we're going to be focusing on the digital divide, the impact that it has on inclusion in this community. We are honored to have with us today really some very great speakers that I'll be happy to introduce at this time. So join me in welcoming, really with great honor, our first panelist for today, and to that extent, even a guest speaker, the Mayor of the City of St. Louis, Tishaura Jones. Welcome, the Mayor. We also have with us the Executive Director of LaunchCode, Jeffrey Mazur. Jeffrey, thank you for joining us. We have with us an immigrant, a journalist, and a connector within the community who has been a client of the International Institute, Mohammed Mupenda. Mohammed, thank you for joining us. And finally, joining us, we have the Executive Director of NPoweR, Wendell Covington. Thank you for joining us. You're all very welcome. And to begin this conversation, I'm going to turn this over to Mayor Jones and ask the mayor to just talk about, first of all, your being here today is testament of your accessibility and your desire to get the job done in this community. But we thought that it would be great for us, since we have you, to just ask what your vision is for inclusion in St. Louis.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for having me today. I am Tishaura Jones, Mayor of the City of St. Louis. I am the 47th Mayor of the City of St. Louis, and also very honored and humbled to be the first Black woman to serve in this position. I'm happy to join you virtually for this incredible and important event to speak about inclusion. When I campaigned for mayor, we developed campaign materials in several languages. And when I became mayor, I sent out a message of gratitude in several languages, because I ran on a simple vision that no matter the color of your skin, how you worship, where you're from, what language you speak, you and your family should be able to not only just succeed, but to thrive in St. Louis. Immigrants from all over the world call our city home, and that's what makes me incredibly proud to be your mayor. And it's no secret that communities all across St. Louis are still struggling as we continue to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic and the Delta variant spreading like wildfire through our state. The American Rescue Plan represents a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to transform St. Louis and rebuild our city stronger. Nearly $500 million in federal dollars are flowing into St. Louis over the next few years, and we need to make sure they're being spent equitably. My focus has been getting vaccines in arms, providing economic relief for families, and improving public safety by addressing the root causes of crime. But I'm also looking to use these federal dollars to address the digital divide that exists in our city, especially in communities of color and in immigrant communities. My proposal includes millions of dollars in expanding broadband and Wi-Fi across our city, including our recreation centers. We need to make sure that all of us can remain digitally connected like we are now, so residents can take advantage of all of our city's resources and services. This past year has shown us that staying connected digitally, especially while being physically apart, is more important than ever. And I believe the city, as a city and as a region, our futures and our destinies are interconnected. What happens on one side of our region affects the other and vice versa. We cannot thrive when half of our city is left behind to fail. We cannot put St. Louis back on the map if our immigrant communities are left behind. And to any young immigrants wondering if they can build a life in St. Louis, the answer is yes. We have strong neighborhoods, tight-knit communities, beautiful parks, and countless opportunities for growth. St. Louis is open to anyone to make a home here. I'm so grateful for the Festival of Nations for lifting up our diverse immigrant populations here in St. Louis. In final words, thank you, mask up, get vaccinated, and God bless you and your families.
Thank you very much, Mayor Jones, for framing, giving us a vision that you have for inclusion in St. Louis. And one of the things that we've done in this several conversations that we're having, and I'm going to turn to the other panelists now to just ask, based on what you've heard and your own feeling, we want to ask, what do you feel is an inclusive St. Louis possible? If yes, how do you think it's possible? And if no, why do you think it's not possible? And I'm going to turn to Jeff, if you don't mind going first.
Well, I thank you, and thanks for having me. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here today and talk about really important topics. And I think to answer your question simply, it's not just possible, it's necessary that we have an inclusive St. Louis. And I think we see that, and we're reminded of the reasons for that again and again, that we have an opportunity as a region and as a city to do great things, to grow and to thrive as a region, for the region writ large and for the individuals who live in our region. But we see over and over, and we get evidence from every quarter, that the only way we're going to do that is if we ensure that everyone has an opportunity to share in that opportunity and to share in that growth and to be a part of what St. Louis can and wants to be. And so it cannot be that it's not possible to do it. It has to be possible, and it has to be necessary, and we have to treat it that way. And I think all of us, though we play different roles in our organizations, and our organizations play oftentimes different roles in this broad ecosystem and in this region, that we all have to think about what our responsibility is to that notion, that whatever we do, we can do it in a way that centers the idea of equity, that we can do things that push us a little bit closer to this idea that everyone needs to benefit from the broad benefits that are happening for St. Louis. And if we do that, then we can actually thrive, we can actually grow, we can actually evolve into a place that's worthy of who we all are, that's worthy of all of the great many colors, backgrounds, beliefs that exist here in this region, and that make it great, and that are celebrated by the Festival of Nations and by all the work that the Institute does. So I think it cannot be that it's just a thing out there that we think maybe we want to deal with. It has to be a thing that we say, if we all are going to succeed, if we're all going to thrive, then we're going to have to be successful at this piece.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jeff. That's really, we started this with this impact of one video, because essentially for us to be successful, every organization has to play their part. I'm going to turn to Wendell to get your thoughts on that question. Is this possible?
Not only is it possible, I think we're obligated. Well, first, I'd be remiss if I don't express my sincere, and I'm so excited that we have Mayor Jones in office. I mean, she's been a great example for people of color, have been a comrade in the work with me in other capacities. And I just think she's a great example for women of color, as also people who don't think an opportunity like this is possible. So I want to congratulate her. This is my first opportunity to congratulate her publicly. We're so excited about what we can do together. I also want to acknowledge Jeff, and I have to follow him, of course, and that's tough. But I love the work that LaunchCode has been doing, and Jeff has been a leader in this area for a long time, and just excited to be a part of this conversation. But to address your question, I think I've never been more excited about the possibility of our city and our region. Although we have some really great challenges with public safety and this ecosystem that we speak about of poverty and mass incarceration, we have some real opportunities to really transform it. And so not only is it possible, we have an obligation, if we're in the helping field, to begin to create these collective impact partnerships. And I believe that we have to move beyond this notion of equality and more towards equity. We all have the opportunity to apply for a mortgage. We all have the opportunity to go to school, but are the outcomes equitable for those who don't have resources versus those who have resources? And so my belief is if we all play together in the sandbox better, that we can give everyone in our community something to gain so we can eliminate this notion of having nothing to lose.
Thank you very much, Wendell. I'm looking forward to hearing from you how we can do this with NPoweR, or how we can contribute towards building that more inclusive society. And let me turn to Mohammed here. But Mohammed, you're an immigrant from East Africa, and you've been living in St. Louis. So do you think that an inclusive St. Louis is possible? Mohammed, we need to unmute you here.
Yes. Yeah, it's a must. You can't live without that.
Okay, great. So now let me go on to asking come back to you, Mayor Jones, with reference to the digital divide. We all saw, we know that the immigrant population was significantly affected by, and even beyond the immigrant population, that we saw that, especially during the pandemic, this digital divide was accentuated because of the lack of communication, since everything went online. And this may be an opportunity for you to speak specifically about ways in which the city is trying to address those challenges, which were already there before the pandemic came and just made a lot more obvious during the pandemic. And now we have this opportunity, which you mentioned in your opening. How are we as a community under your leadership going to be addressing this digital divide?
Yes, as we all saw last year around March, when schools shut down, students were really left behind, especially Black and Brown students that didn't have not only access to Wi-Fi, but also access to hardware, iPads, Chromebooks, to be able to do their homework at home. And we also exposed a lot with their home environments that became problematic as well, with teachers trying to pivot to online education. There were a lot of kids that were left behind. One of the things that the city is trying to do with the American Rescue Plan Act is we are expanding it, trying to expand broadband and Wi-Fi into communities of color, communities in qualified census tracts, to make sure that they have access to broadband and Wi-Fi at a low cost or no cost. So we're still exploring those options and how the city can help, how the city can expand options for people to get online, because it's not only related to children also being able to work from home or go to school from home. A lot of companies pivoted to working from home. and having the necessary broadband bandwidth to be able to withstand that. So we have been actively talking with our providers, the T-Mobiles, the Charters, the AT&Ts of the world, to try to see how we can expand the options for people to be able to get online and stay online in a very cheap or not expensive manner, low cost manner.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor Jones. And thank you for the honor. I was honored to be part of the Stimulus Advisory Board, and we had an extensive conversation around this because it just keeps people out of the many opportunities that are there for them, whether it's in education, in healthcare, all of those opportunities. So we're looking forward to see how that gap is closed with the work that you and the team at the city are doing, and our partners in the community. And I would like to turn to Mohammed, because Mohammed is an immigrant and works a lot with the immigrant community. And it may be helpful for Mohammed to share a little bit about how we worked during the pandemic to be able to bridge the gap and what opportunities lie there. So Mohammed, you have been working with the immigrant community. Can you share a little bit of the challenges that were faced by the immigrant population as a result of lack of technology?
Yeah, thank you. I'm honored to be part of the team speaker series. Before the pandemic, if I can go a bit before the pandemic, it was very easy because I could always, whenever there is a concern from immigrants comes to me, I could always rush to the institute. I speak to people. It was very easy to communicate with the International Institute. And since they were working from the office, I could always tell them, hey, just get transport, go to the institute. This person may be able to solve your problem. So when it went to the pandemic, it became a bit challenging. One, they had these challenges of lack of the language barriers. Most of them, they don't speak English. And besides speaking English, they don't have knowledge on how to use phones, smartphones, the internet. Someone might be having a phone but doesn't know how to go to WhatsApp, to go to social media. So which was a big challenge during the pandemic. Those are the challenges we face. And the International Institute, since was working remotely, it was very hard for you to speak to an immigrant who doesn't even know how to use a smartphone, that get in touch with someone in housing, get in touch with someone in food stamp who is going to help you to get food stamps. Get in touch with someone who is to maybe connect you for the job, as they used to be to have jobs through the International Institute before the pandemic. So the challenges were diverse, and tackling them or walking them through, it was very hard, of which we had to use, there is an app called WhatsApp. WhatsApp, which is less used here in the US compared to Africa, where I have been, it has helped me a lot to move through with many immigrants within St. Louis, Missouri, even out of our state, those who really know me or who were in touch with me and they speak the languages I speak. So what we could do, in most times, the information which could come straight to the International Institute, going through to the immigrants who don't speak English, it could always be easy when they are going to their office. So during the pandemic, I used to use WhatsApp as a way of communicating to these people. And what I could do, it's using the voices. I record voices. If it's in Kiswahili, it's recorded in Kiswahili. It's recorded in English. It's recorded in French. it's recorded in any other languages, Kinyarwanda, Kirundi. Then after recording, because we were in lockdown, curfews, the unemployment was going on. No one knew how to go through about that. People had no food. There were food resources, but no one could know the location. People didn't have access to masks. So all of those ones I could record. After recording in the languages they understand, I just send the voice. That's how I have tried to tackle the challenges. But besides that, I have been always in touch with the International Institute and Vitendo of Africa, plus other people like Prepare STL, which I have been also working with, like as a volunteer. They had all information relates to the pandemic and how we can go through it. So any information which could come from the International Institute going down, I could receive it from Vitendo of Africa. I just try to spread it or to disseminate to the immigrants who speak the languages rather than English.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. That really explains the challenges that we went through during the pandemic as a result of the lack of access, and to an extent, even the language was a huge challenge. And one thing we know for sure is that not everybody is going to have access to technology in the short term, but beginning to have this immigrant population or the Black and brown populations just educated with technology is a way that we can break through. And we've been having this ongoing conversations with NPoweR and LaunchCode about how we can help bring more access to these communities. And so I would like to, Jeff, talk a little bit about, the mission of LaunchCode is to build a skilled workforce by creating pathways for skilled people seeking careers in technology. And how has LaunchCode served the immigrant population in the past? So it could be in the past, or how you envisage serving the immigrant population.
Sure, thank you. So we're really at LaunchCode, as you note, about addressing the digital divide from the perspective of who has an opportunity to step into what we know are really high growth and high potential careers in middle to high skill technology jobs in software development and similar kinds of roles. And we've really tried to address that problem through two important threads, one of which is providing free and accessible training and education so people can gain the skills to do that. But another equally important thread has been the developing relationships with employer partners and creating an accessible pathway whereby people who have skills, whether they learn them through us or learn them somewhere else, can actually turn those skills into a job that can support them and their family through a career in technology. And one of the ways that we've sought to do that work from the very beginning and to change employer perspectives on how they do tech hiring has really been about the use of credentials in that space. And if you look back over history, the credential, oftentimes a 4-year computer science degree, was the thing, or an engineering degree, was the thing that employers were using as a proxy for someone's readiness to do that work. And what we said from the beginning, just from a general perspective, was we really think that's the wrong approach, that serves to keep more people out than bring more people in. And that what we really should be doing is thinking about the skills that someone needs to do work as a software developer or a software engineer. And so we started working with employers to try and de-emphasize and get them to think about skill-based hiring rather than credential-based hiring. And it turns out, we didn't do this intentionally, but we learned over the course of time in doing this work that winds up being a really extraordinarily important thing for many people who are new immigrants to the region, because we began to see people who said, hey, I'm an engineer, I'm a computer scientist who got my training in Ukraine, or I'm a software engineer whose credential is from the Indian subcontinent. And all of these things that I've done, these credentials I've earned, they're not recognized here by employers in a way that allows me to move into a role that's really befitting of my skill and my talent. And so this process that we've created and that we are using with employers to break down this overwhelming reliance on credentials and instead focus on skill wound up being an important door opener for many people who had the skills already, but who simply had credentials that took a form that weren't familiar to or weren't accepted by employers here that were hiring. And so, that's one of the things that we've done from the beginning that we continue to do is serve as this conduit for people who really are highly skilled, but who don't have the markings that many employers in error are looking for as a sign of their readiness to do this work. So I think that's one really important piece. And I think the other piece is obviously how we, that only speaks to a portion of the population that already had skills. How do we continue to deliver programming and really create a situation where we're operating from a position of abundance rather than scarcity in the way we think about access to skills and these careers? The traditional model has always been for people to think of this as a competition. I'm going to compete with people to get into a degree program that's going to put me in a position to get one of these scarce software developer jobs, and I'm going to kind of push everyone out of my way to get there. But I think what we see is that there's a huge number of these jobs and employers need more people. And if we build systems, if we take the approach that this really should be a collaborative thing, if we build a community around the idea that bringing more people in allows more people to flow into those ideas, into those roles, that it perpetuates this idea that people really should be helping one another along that journey instead. And I think once we do that, then we get out of the business where, as folks mentioned earlier, this idea where the people who start with the most resources are most likely to be successful in this competitive situation. Instead, we create a scenario where people really can thrive in this idea that this is a world of abundance that we can all benefit from and that we can all advance in. So those are kind of big picture ways that I think and hope that LaunchCode is contributing to the community here in St. Louis. And to push that notion of abundance, I mean, we talk about here last year, somewhere upwards of 900 people who we were able to bring into career-focused programs in St. Louis as a means of delivering that opportunity and trying to get away from the scarcity mindset that for so long has really put a choke on who can walk into these careers.
Well, thank you very much, Jeff. I know we have been having some conversation with LaunchCode on how we can bridge that gap for the immigrant population, and we're looking forward to rolling out some exciting opportunities here. And I'll turn to Wendell to talk a little bit about the work that NPoweR does. Because I've had several conversations with Wendell about this. We're also looking at how we can, I know you were really focused on creating livable wages for people to create upward mobility for them in society. But talk a little bit about your thoughts, which you've shared several times with me, about the immigrant population and how you want to close the gap, and the Black and brown population as well.
Absolutely. First of all, Jeff so eloquently outlined the challenge, but I think there's some other opportunities we can lean into a little differently. Jeff mentioned that kind of mid-level and advanced level certifications. One thing that we have to address, Ari, is that less than 30% of Missouri schools have real vibrant computer science programs, right? And so when we're talking about creating a pipeline equipped to matriculate into those advanced level and mid-level courses, they need those foundational training opportunities. Our lane is a little different than LaunchCode. Like Jeff mentioned, we look at this continuum that we should be providing that entry-level foundational skills that will provide a bridge for participants to obtain those stackable credentials. As the tech industry evolves, more certifications will be required, right? More opportunities are coming our way. St. Louis, this whole region is becoming a Silicon Prairie. And so we're talking about persistence and retention and success rates. We believe at NPoweR that you cannot have that success without having those fundamental skills. And so we provide that 23-week A+ tech fundamental certification that can help young people transition right into gainful employment, at the same time not having the barriers of the cost of education. They can earn a gainful wage. We're not really interested in helping poor people be comfortable at being poor. We want to give them a pathway for gainful living to where they can have power and agency and transform their own communities. We believe that all people should have access to a hopeful future. All people should have have access to the American dream. And so, you know, our schools are limited in what they can provide, right? So organizations like us should be able to help become a liaison between the private industry as well as K-12s, community colleges, universities, and provide a real tangible on-ramp and off-ramp for people to earn a gainful wage, also industry recognized skills, and also be equipped with the foundational knowledge, like Jeff mentioned, to transition into these software development opportunities and these cybersecurity opportunities and cloud computing opportunities. But again, it's almost like we should be married together. What Jeff and LaunchCode is doing on the advanced and the mid-level work is outstanding. To date, NPoweR has served about 600 graduates since 2017. We want to grow that even greater. We know that there'll be nearly 100,000 tech careers coming to St. Louis in the next 10 years or so. So how can we equip Black, brown, immigrants, women, who've also been left out of the conversation when it comes down to technology? How can we create this continuum of services to where everybody has an equal access to these tech careers and gainful employment? So we feel that, similar to Jeff, we provide that 16-week virtual instruction, 7 to 8 weeks of paid apprenticeship, and then also a pathway to entry-level employment. But the one thing that we also have as an organization is a national network. You know, our national CEO, Bertina Ceccarelli, is very serious about this whole notion of diversity, equity, and inclusion. You know, our mission command ship is intentionally trying to attract young women of color, immigrants, into this technology space. And so we, again, have to create these collective impact partnerships, and that we have to be able to provide a pathway and a bridge for all people who are interested in becoming gainfully employed. And so that's what we're doing. We plan to serve another 1,000 young people by 2024. And so we're looking to play in the sandbox well together and transform to Mayor Jones's plan. We want to transform this city. With our leadership, we think we can get it done.
Fantastic. Mayor Jones, I'm going to turn to you, and this is something that you mentioned in your opening. You know, as I sit here today, I see we are able to create a partnership here between the professionals in the tech industry, the immigrant population, and the city, to make the city attractive for anyone who wants to come and live here. But you did mention in your campaign and your post-campaign message, which was celebrated, especially in the immigrant community and for organizations like us that serve the immigrant community, you use several languages, and which we saw that as a very strong signal of your cooperation. But I just wanted for our audience who, and I'm going to ask the audience, you know, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A section, and we'll be picking up those questions. But that signal, like, why was it very important to engage that immigrant population for the city of St. Louis? Why did that become like almost a cornerstone of your public communication during the campaign and post the campaign?
Well, as someone who has often, you know, been marginalized, not only as a woman, but also as an African American in this country, this city, I also felt that it was important to recognize that St. Louis isn't just Black and white. St. Louis has a myriad of different people from different backgrounds, and we have to be welcoming to the immigrant community. And that's something that the city hasn't always gotten right. And so I wanted to make sure that it was a hallmark of my campaign to be inclusive, to recognize that everybody doesn't read English and that we should reach out to voters who English isn't their primary language. So we translated our materials into Bosnian, Spanish, and Mandarin to try to reach different communities. But I also want to talk about, go back to the last question that Wendell and Jeff were talking about. It's not only that we are training training is good, but we also have to, as an employer, as one of the city's largest employers, we have to be open and welcome to the people as they finish their training. And I'm proud to say that as treasurer, I've hired interns and permanent employees, at least 5 or 6 directly from NPoweR, and have watched these young people grow into permanent careers in the IT department that I built in the treasurer's office. And I look forward to continuing to do that as mayor, to tap programs like NPoweR and LaunchCode, because that's where the future of our IT professionals are coming from. As they were talking about, the 4-year degree may not be attainable for everybody, but it's these, 16-week, 2-month, 6-month programs that are opening tons of doors for people into an industry that has oftentimes been closed to people of color. And so as I look to improve the IT infrastructure in St. Louis or in city government, and for those of you who followed my career as treasurer, you know that when it comes to IT and inclusion, that's something that not only walk the walk, talk the talk, but walk the walk. But as I try to expand our IT infrastructure in the city, I'm going to be tapping NPoweR and LaunchCode for employees because we're going to have a very defined skill set that only these organizations are able to match those skills. So but again, it's important because we cannot leave people behind. And as someone who has often been left behind or whose family and friends have been left behind, it's important to me to change that trajectory for people who look like me and people who come here to our community to seek a better life for themselves and their families.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor Jones, for that. We're very glad to know that this is something that you have been engaged in, and you see the opportunity, but also the need for the engagement of the Black and Brown community as well as the immigrant community. And let me turn to Mohammed, who is the immigrant here and a journalist and has become a very strong advocate for access for the immigrant population. And I really just want to, find out from Mohammed what is it that motivates his passion to be able to. He's really been focusing on trying to close this digital divide gap in the immigrant population. But Mohammed, can you just share with us what is it that animates your passion to be doing this as a volunteer, volunteering your time to engage and educate and connect the immigrant population?
Yeah, personally, I have my background is in mass communication and travel and tourism management. And also I have been lucky to know or to learn different languages. Of now I speak or I can write about 7 languages. So those languages, having those skills and being in a great country or continent, which I see that it has many opportunities. And I'm that person who believes in advocating for voiceless. So having that spirit has inspired me to use my languages and communication skills to make sure those who are voiceless are heard. And I'm happy when I got in US, I managed to get in touch with the International Institute, of which I saw when it comes to resources, the resources from the government, state, cities, St. Louis, down to the International Institute, they are very allocated, and it becomes very easy to communicate to these migrants where they should go, what they should do, and what they are required to do. So having, in bottom line, having the skills in languages and communication, it has enabled me to make sure the communication goes where it is supposed to go. The information which I want to always use to advocate for immigrants, it goes where it's supposed to go. And I'm happy International Institute, Vitendo for Africa, you are always there anytime I get in touch with you.
Thank you. Thank you for the work that you continue doing, Mohammed. You've been a great connector. We have a question, and this would probably go to Wendell, Jeff, and maybe Mayor Jones, but it's a question from Justin Raimondo, and he's asking, what sorts of frameworks, resources, or programs have you all used to support employers to navigate and implement this skill-based hiring, particularly as it pertains to the immigrant and Black and brown populations?
Yeah, so I'll tap into it, and I think, you know, at NPoweR we have a system of wraparound services. Number one, right? We have two career placement and internship placement managers who work directly with our employer partners, who, you know, set the framework for professional development for our trainees to know what to expect when they come into these positions. We also know that, especially immigrants or Black and brown people, this whole tech training piece is new to them, right? And there are so many different barriers that our trainees have to navigate. So we have social supports managers that connect our trainees with whatever needed services they require, whether it's childcare, whether it's transportation. We don't want any of the outside challenges of the world to prevent you from being successful. We also have great recruitment and admissions managers to also prepare you to what's expected, right? When you're going into this new training experience with NPoweR. We also have regional advisory boards who are our ambassadors to employer partners that Mayor Jones spoke about. And, you know, it doesn't matter how good our training is if we don't have corporate partners who are willing to and tenacious enough to give Black, brown, and immigrants an opportunity. And so to begin to look at things differently. So, and a myriad of community partners. We know that there's only so much we can do alone, right? And so whether it's public, private, corporate, again, creating new partnerships between other tech providers, is what we're planning to do. And so that's in and of itself what we do at NPoweR. And so I hope I answered that question.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to turn to Jeff as well, if you would like to take that
Sure.
question.
Well, Wendell, you know, Wendell said a mouthful, and I think I would just urge agreement with many of the things that he said. I would know. I first want to thank Justin for the question, and I'd point to the fact that I think he's doing really vital work in trying to build these sorts of processes and systems in the life sciences community here in the region. So that's great. Justin, thanks for the question. I would point to, just in terms of the way we try and do this work in a way that supports employers' journey into this space of skills-based hiring, that apprenticeship is a tool that obviously we use and NPoweR uses as well, that winds up being, as you know, a really important mechanism for giving people the opportunity to continue to learn while they start their work career, and gives employers an opportunity to invest in people who perhaps they otherwise would not have an opportunity to bring into their organization. So at LaunchCode, we have access to our own USDOL registered apprenticeship model, as well as a apprenticeship that's not a registered apprenticeship that we use, both of which are designed for those very purposes, Justin, which is to say, hey, you're an employer, you have specific needs. Let's find a model that works for you, that allows us to provide you with people who are hardworking, talented, skilled people who've demonstrated that they deserve an opportunity, and find a pathway into those organizations where they can be successful. And then on the flip side of the coin, let's, via those programs and those apprentices, provide best practices to the employers about how they can bring those people in, have them be successful, have them continue their learning journey, with an understanding that no one, by and large, no one is going to come into a role as an apprentice and without learning a new skill, stay there as an employee for 15, 20, 30 years. That these folks know, and those employers know, they're going to come in, they're going to demonstrate their capacity, and then they're going to need to be a continuing learner as they go along, picking up those new skills as technology evolves and as the needs of the employer changes. So if we can, the work of organizations like NPoweR and LaunchCode is to help bridge that gap, which can be a very vexing thing for employers. But if we can provide those frameworks and those structures, make it a little easier, serve as intermediaries to do that work, then we can get more people along that pathway and into those roles, which is ultimately what we're all trying to do.
One more thing, Ari,
Yes,
I
go
think
ahead.
Jeff definitely outlined what we do in the tech space, but I think it's equally important to provide professional development, right? And not to assume that just because young people have the skills that you know how to execute those skills in the most productive and appropriate way. So to be able to have mock interviews, to be able to bring in our partners, corporate partners, to be able to say, hey, here's the type of employee we're looking to hire. And these are the type of soft skills that we need, the type of competencies that we need. Also, how do you work in project-based teams? Not to just throw young people, and Jeff mentioned the apprenticeship, that experiential learning opportunity. How do we apply the content in a real-world application? We give them those building blocks. LaunchCode does it great. We do it great. But it's also wonderful to see companies like MasterCard and Accenture and Worldwide Technology come in and say, we're so involved in this, we're going to show you how to be successful in our organization. I think we do the same thing as well as LaunchCode.
Well, thank you very much. Also to say at the International Institute, we actually also provide career advancement for international professionals who come here, finding ways in which they can also integrate. And we work with great employers in the community, MasterCard you mentioned as well. And there is a question from Carmen Dance, which is asking whether LaunchCode and NPoweR will be willing to set up offices at the International Institute to work with the immigrant population. I would say to Carmen, that's an ongoing conversation, and we want to take those opportunities everywhere that we can reach people, and we should be making some announcements here shortly. With that, I would want to have your closing remarks. It's really been an engaging conversation. There is never enough time to have this conversations, but I would want to turn to Mayor Jones for your closing remarks.
Well, again, thank you for having me for this conversation. And it's been very enlightening to understand the needs of immigrant communities through this conversation as it relates to the digital divide, as well as learn about some new things that I didn't know that LaunchCode and NPoweR were doing. Please look at the city as a consistent partner. And again, I fully admit that the city of St. Louis has not been a great partner to the immigrant community in the past. And I ran on a platform of inclusion and stand by that, because again, we cannot expect the city to succeed if half of it is left to fail, and that includes our Black and Brown people and our immigrant communities. So please look forward for my administration to do a lot more things that are inclusive and representative of all of the communities that make up our great city. And I look forward to being a good partner in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mayor Jones. I want to thank everybody for joining us today as part of this conversation. This is just a conversation starter, and we hope that it doesn't end here. One thing that we've tried to do is really put inclusion at the forefront of the Festival of Nations this year, and want to keep this conversation going right up till the end of August, when we have the grand finale of the Festival of Nations. Next Monday, we're actually going to be talking about healthcare. Healthcare inequalities, a threat to an inclusive St. Louis. Again, the pandemic did shine a light on this, but it had been there before. But as we look forward to building a more inclusive St. Louis, how can we address these inequalities as a community? And we may not have the answers, but if we are working together, we hope that we can address it. Let me also use this opportunity to highlight the Festival of Nations will be taking place on August 28th. We just had a great partnership with 9 Mile Garden. It's going to be only one day this year as a result of everything that has happened. It will be on August 28th from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. And we're going to bring this community together to taste of the diversity that is within the community. And I hope you all will be able to join us, and Mayor Jones will be reaching out to you to hopefully that you'll be able to join us as well at that event. To our guests, we have people who will join us here on Zoom as well as on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you for being part of this conversation. Obviously, we can go on and on and on. We have about 5 minutes left, and there's just several questions that are coming in. But I'm going to just turn to Mohammed, Wendell, or Jeff, if you all have a minute for your closing remarks.
Absolutely. We have some huge challenges in St. Louis, and but I've never been more excited than ever before, right? To have an opportunity to give people access to economic self-sufficiency is something that I'm here for. And I know Mayor Jones, I know Jeff, Mohammed is grateful. I'm so grateful to meet you, but we have some great opportunities to work together to move the needle when we're talking about public safety and eliminating these access issues, when we're talking about food security, when we're talking about gainful employment, when we're talking about access to real education and training. We have the intelligence, we have the people with the credentials and the capabilities. It's how do we coordinate them in a collective way to help Mayor Jones and her great plan. And so I'm excited, I'm here for the work. And so I'm here to work with International Institute, and thank you for having us, Array. This is awesome. And we won't be satisfied until we have a real inclusive society here in St. Louis. So thank you for having me. And Jeff, let's go to work. I'm ready.
Mohammed?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I would say that this is our second home country. The most communities have been telling them, I believe it's true. I would plea with the mayor to look into something which would consider the immigrants, mostly who are in St. Louis City, those who went to school and they came with their qualifications. I know it could be hard, but I'm sure you can deliver our messages, our papers. We are qualified, we have papers. We are ready to work with the Native Americans. We have all it takes. They should consider us, not telling us, hey, go back to school. I believe education is the same. If I've been working with an American when I'm back in Africa, why not working with him when I'm in the US? So those are different questions I've been asking myself. Why do they have to tell you go back to school while you have been working with them? And it's the same skills you was giving to them back in Africa, and you are here, it can't work. So that's something I would pray with the mayor of the city. Then I would also appreciate the International Institute to keep pushing forward on availing resources to immigrants, by noting that they have the challenges which we have cited, like the digital and language barriers. So noted that.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. Absolutely, this is why we're having this conversation. Thinking about it, it's a great testament of what we as a community want to accomplish. To have an immigrant from Africa sitting on the same panel and having a conversation about how we build a more inclusive St. Louis with the mayor of the city of St. Louis. And this gives a lot of credit to the mayor, and it tells the story of what America is and what is possible in America. This image is really what this country represents. Jeff, if you want to
sure, quickly, thank you. I want to just reiterate something that Her Honor, the mayor shared, and that's around, I appreciate the way that she framed her comments not just as a supporter and customer or user of the programs like NPoweR and LaunchCode. She really thought about this from her perspective as an employer in the city of St. Louis as an employer. And I think all of us, those of us like Wendell and I who work in this nonprofit ecosystem that is around career and talent development, we've heard and we get the support from all areas of the civic leadership community. But we oftentimes, I think, lose sight of the fact that advocates in that community, people who are of tremendous influence like the mayor or like the International Institute, have a voice with the employer community, and exercising that voice and reminding them that, hey, you may support these programs as a part of your philanthropic or community support initiative, but that's not really enough. What is enough is saying you have economic power as an employer of people and as someone with jobs to give, oftentimes hundreds of jobs. And if you really believe and support what these organizations are doing, you will come to them and you will work with them to hire the people that come out. And that is the way that you can put money where your mouth is, in the way that Mayor Jones has mentioned she's doing with the city, and that many other employers are doing as well. There are a number of employers who do that really well and who have bought in at a robust level to doing it. There are many others that have vast capacity to do it and who aren't. And I think we all need to be a part of bringing that conversation to them and asking them to do just a little bit better.
Well, thank you very much. I know, Mayor Jones, you had said your last word, your closing remarks on this, but if you would want to, because a few things had been raised here, if you would want to add anything, I will appreciate it.
I don't have anything else to add. I think we covered it pretty succinctly. Have to be intentional about our inclusion.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you all for being here. We're deeply honored, and have a great week. Have a splendid week ahead of you, everybody. Thank you.
Great job.